All right, you can go.
Good afternoon, sir. Good afternoon, class. My name is Carissa Mackenzie Brown, and I, alongside Chelsea Bachan and Jayan Daly, will be presenting Chapter 4 entitled Understanding Yourself. Please note that the presentation includes dialogue between three friends. We hope that this presentation is as enjoyable as it is informative. Thank you, and we will begin with Act 1.
Act 1, the leadership struggle. Characters such as Carissa, a young leader struggling to connect with a team, Jian, a supportive and insightful friend, Chelsea, a direct but encouraging mentor. Setting is a casual meeting space where Carissa vents about her leadership struggles. Carissa sits at the table, tapping a pen on her notebook, visibly frustrated. Jian and Chelsea enters. Carissa, that pen looks like it's about to quit on you. What's going on?
I don't get it. I was chosen to lead this group because I'm good at organizing things, but no one listens to me. I tell them what needs to be done, and either they ignore me, argue, or do things their own way. Jan,
Sorry, did not realize my mic was muted. That sounds real frustrating, boy. But let me ask, do you know why they're reacting that way?
uh, no idea. I give clear instructions, so I don't understand the problem.
Hmm. Carissa, leadership isn't just about giving orders, it's about understanding people, including yourself.
Myself? What I have to do with them not following directions?
Everything. Have you ever stopped to think about how you lead? What strengths and weaknesses do you bring to the table?
I mean, I guess I'm organized and decisive, but I don't see how that helps if my team won't cooperate.
It helps a lot. You see, leadership starts with self awareness. If you don't understand how you communicate, react to challenges, or make decisions, you won't see how that impacts your team.
So, in other words, I need to analyze myself before I can understand them.
Exactly. Have you ever hesitated to share an idea because you were afraid people might judge it?
Yeah, of course.
Or have you ever been so frustrated by things not going your way that it threw you off completely?
That definitely just happened.
Those reactions tells you a lot about yourself. They reveal how you handle pressure, how you view mistakes, and what values shape your leadership. If you don't recognize those things, they'll affect how you lead without you even realizing it.
So, my strengths help me, but my weaknesses might be making things harder.
Facts. Strong leaders recognize both. If you're always decisive but never listen, your team might feel unheard. If you're too focused on being organized, you might not be adapting to their working styles.
And if you don't take the time to understand them, how can you expect them to follow you?
Huh. So, maybe the problem isn't just them. Maybe I need to learn more about myself first.
Now, that sounds like a leader ready to grow.
Gressel looks thoughtful, realizing leadership is about self awareness. End of Act 1.
Okay, so class, I have a question for you. Um, you can take 10 seconds to think about it. What did you understand from Act 1? Anybody, don't rush all at once. Hi, Nicole or Augustine, either one.
First, I'm going to say that he was trying to understand it from her point of view rather than thinking
Yeah,
about it from how others
yeah,
would have been thinking and how the others would have been even if spoken in that direction. order,
Mm,
laying for. So she really did need to understand herself in order
mm.
to do anything.
Thank you for that. And I believe the second person that has your hand up is Nicole or
Nicolan.
Nicolon.
Yeah, that was right.
Sorry.
From what I understand from your skit is that it was difficult to make good or effective leadership decisions because you didn't understand your work your character enough, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes,
My
that
question
was
is,
exactly. Go ahead.
was it just the leadership or was it that the person's instructions was clear to you but unclear to the following team? So could that be a reason why, as well, so the leader did not take the time to go over the instructions?
So it was more so a leadership problem more
Right.
than instructions weren't clear.
Okay.
Yes.
Next
All
slide.
right. Mm-hmm. Next slide. Okay, so in Act 1, we meet Carissa, an organized and decisive leader who is struggling to get her team to follow her. She feels frustrated because her efforts aren't working. With Jayan and Chelsea's help, she realizes something crucial. Leadership isn't about giving instructions, it's about self awareness. Next slide. One of the most important skills for personal growth and leadership is self awareness. The ability to understand our own strengths, weaknesses, thought patterns, and values. It helps us recognize why we think, act, and react the way we do, allowing us to navigate challenges more effectively. Bennett observes 4 lessons which to develop self-knowledge, aka self-awareness. Number 1, you are your own best teacher. You know what motivates you and what holds you back. Since no one understands your aspirations, fears, and challenges better than you do, you can use this knowledge to push yourself forward and overcome obstacles in ways that work for you. Number 2, accept responsibility. Blame no one. This means taking ownership of your actions, decisions, and their consequences instead of shifting blame onto others or external circumstances. When you accept responsibility, you focus on what you can fix or what you can and how you can improve a situation rather than wasting time blaming others. This approach fosters problem solving, growth, and resilience, helping you move forward rather than staying stuck in negativity. Number 3, you can learn anything you want. When we believe that our abilities and intelligence are not fixed traits, but can be developed through time and effort, we adopt a growth mindset. And lastly, true understanding comes from reflection on our own experiences. This comes from knowledge that is gained by taking the time to analyze and learn from them. Having an experience is not enough. True growth comes from thoughtful reflection. Next slide. So now that we've spoken about the importance of self-awareness, let's move on to our blind spots and strengths and weaknesses, all which affect our leadership skills. As Carissa reflects, she realizes that her strengths, organization, and decisiveness might also be obstacles. She's so focused on structure that she is not adapting to her team's needs. Next slide. According to Berkeley Wellbeing Institute, strengths are defined as positive character traits or skills that are considered positive. Strengths include knowledge, attributes, skills, and talents, while weaknesses are defined as character traits or skills that are considered negative or not as well developed. Weaknesses include blind spots, poorly developed skills, or problematic personal behaviors. The best leaders balance their strengths and find strategies to work around their weaknesses. So, how do you figure out your strengths and weaknesses? Next slide. Here are some suggestions. Number 1, self reflection. Write a list of things that you're good at. Reflect on it. In that list, you will find skill sets that you didn't even realize you had. Number 2, feedback. Reflect on the feedback given from colleagues, friends, and family. Analyze and study the feedback. Recognize your patterns of excellence as well as your pitfalls. Look at recurring themes. What made you successful in a certain area and made you fall short in another? Third, personality assessment. Take an online strength and weakness test or a personality assessment, such as the Myers-Briggs test. And lastly, focus on growth. Learning to manage your weaknesses can help develop a growth mindset. Example, Helen Keller, an American author, could not see, hear, nor speak, but she learned to communicate remarkably well. Next slide. So I have another question for you all, and you can take, I guess, 30 seconds to think about it. Identify one strength you have, and has it ever presented itself as a challenge? And how did you manage this to continue being effective? Hi, Sakura.
Yeah, I would say one of my strengths is thinking, but
Mm-hmm.
it could turn into a challenge by me overthinking. And sometimes I'd just take a step back and just relax and realize that whatever's going to happen is going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
That's I would say.
So that's how you manage it, by just accepting it for what it is.
Yes.
Okay. Anyone else? I see that, Augustine.
So I would say one strength that I have is being direct, and it only becomes an issue when others take it as being standoffish for me. But I'm just trying to make sure that there's no miscommunication. But how I manage it is learning that everyone would not interpret what I say
Mm-hmm.
as see it. So I try
Mm-hmm.
to be empathetic and soften my approach to how I feel.
You try to be what?
Empathetic, like feel
Mm-hmm.
everything, as well as soften the way that I say it.
Okay, I like that. Okay, thank you. Jaya, next slide. So we move on to adaptability in leadership. Chelsea helps Carissa see that leadership isn't about simply being right. It's about being effective. If people aren't following, it's time to adjust their approach. Next slide. Leaders need to be open to change. This requires a growth mindset where challenges are viewed as opportunities for learning and development. Leaders also need to understand the feedback loop. Does anybody know what the feedback loop is?
So
No? Okay. So in communication, the feedback loop is a cyclical process where the receiver of a message provides a response to the sender, allowing them to understand if the message was received and interpreted correctly, and to adjust their communication accordingly, creating a two-way exchange that ensures clarity and mutual understanding. The response of the team or organization serves as a critical indicator of the leader's effectiveness. Remember that leading isn't about controlling others, but inspiring and guiding your team to do the work needed. Next slide. Nearing the end of Act 1, Carissa has a realization. Maybe the problem isn't just her team. Maybe she needs to grow as a leader first. Next slide. Taking responsibility for growth. True leaders take responsibility for their development and growth. They actively seek to improve their skills and knowledge and own their strengths and weaknesses to become better. Blaming others for leadership struggles prevents real progress. Shifting blame avoids addressing personal shortcomings. It creates a barrier to self-awareness and improvement. Real growth comes from owning mistakes and finding solutions in order for the team to move forward. Leadership is a lifelong journey of self-improvement, requiring reflection and adjustment. Next slide. I have another question for you guys. What areas in your life can be improved through your leadership skills?
Public speaking.
Mm. Anyone else? Sakura, was it you that said public speaking?
Yeah.
Yeah. So how do you plan to improve that?
I don't know. I feel like when I develop leadership skills, I'll be more confident, and that would, in turn, make me more confident speaking in front of groups of people.
Okay, so then this class will help you.
Hopefully.
Okay. The next slide. Okay, so now we're at the conclusion. Next slide. By the end of Act 1, Carissa takes a big step in her leadership journey. She realizes that effective leadership is about more than just giving orders. It requires self awareness, adaptability, and a commitment to personal growth. Next slide. Carissa now understands that self awareness is the foundation of leadership. You should understand yourself before you lead others. 2. Recognize both your strengths and weaknesses. Strengths can be double edged, and blind spots can hold you back. 3. Take responsibility for your leadership journey. Growth happens when leaders hold themselves accountable. And lastly, be adaptable and open to learning. Leading is about responding effectively to different situations and people. And before I go, I would like to quickly share that how you feel about yourself shapes your perspective on life. Your feelings are your motivation fuel. This leads me to self concept. Self concept is the way you perceive, understand, and define yourself. It includes your beliefs, thoughts, and feelings about your abilities, personality, values, and roles in life. Self concept shapes your confidence, behavior, and interactions with others. This is why self awareness is crucial for leadership. Thank you. We will now proceed to Act 2, presented by Chelsea Piachan.
Hello, good evening, everyone. My name is Charles Beechan, and I will be presenting Act 2. So let's begin. You could go to the next slide. Act 2. Okay. Act 2, the power of strength-based leadership. Setting a coffee shop where Carissa meets with Gian and Chelsea for advice. Carissa slumps into a chair, frustrated. Gian and Chelsea sit across from her, sipping coffee. All right, Carissa, spill. You look like you're carrying the weight of the world.
I thought I was making progress, but my group still isn't getting it together. I've been trying to be more self aware, but it's not helping.
What exactly is happening?
Some of them still not listening. Others do things their own way, and a few just sit back and let me do all the work. It's like I can't win.
Sounds like you're trying to fix everything at once. Have you considered focusing on your strengths instead?
My strengths? I thought I needed to work on my weaknesses.
That's a common mistake. People think they have to fix their flaws, but research shows you grow more by focusing on what you do well.
So instead of fixing my weaknesses, I should just ignore them.
Not ignore, but manage. Let's figure out your strengths first. What comes naturally to you?
Well, I'm good at organizing tasks and making sure things get done on time.
That's great. And what excites you about leading this group?
Mm. I like coming up with ideas and seeing them turn into something real. I want us to create something we're all proud of.
Those are big strengths. Now, let's talk about your weaknesses without making them the enemy.
I guess I get frustrated when people don't follow my structure, and I don't always see why they want to do things differently.
See, you don't need to erase those weaknesses. You just need a strategy to balance them. What if, instead of forcing your way, you tapped into their strengths?
What do you mean?
Every person has a unique set of talents. Some might be creative thinkers, while others might be great at problem solving. If you recognize their strengths, you can use them instead of fighting against them.
Oh, so instead of trying to make them fit my style, I should help them work in a way that fits theirs?
Exactly. Strong leaders don't just lead from their strengths, they help others lead from theirs.
That actually makes sense. I have been too focused on what they are not doing instead of what they can do.
And that brings us to another leadership trick, filling their buckets.
Huh? Buckets?
Think of everyone as having an invisible bucket. When people feel valued and appreciated, their bucket fills up and they work harder. But when they're criticized or ignored, their bucket empties.
Right now, your team might have some empty buckets. If they don't feel valued, they won't be motivated.
So, how do I fill their buckets?
Recognize their strengths. Encourage them. Let them know you appreciate their efforts.
When people feel good about their contributions, they become more engaged. That's how you lead, by bringing out the best in them.
I think I've been so focused on what's going wrong that I haven't actually acknowledged what's going right.
Now that's the mindset of a real leader.
Looks like you just took another step toward becoming a stronger leader. Ready to put it into action?
Yes, it's time to lead with my strengths and help my team do the same.
Carissa, Gian, and Chelsea cling their coffee cups together. End of Act 2. So, can anyone tell me what they understood from Act 2? Yes, Nicklin, you could go ahead.
So what from I understand from Act Two is that they looked at their weaknesses, but they only played to their weaknesses. They didn't include their strengths. So what Act Two means is that you, as a leader, you're not thinking for yourself in terms of how your strengths and weaknesses play into the project. However, you'd offer the team, you're thinking about how everybody weaknesses and strengths could work into the team to make a well-oiled machine in a way.
Yes, that's correct. Anyone else? Yes, Julia.
Yes, from what I gathered is that people have strengths, they have weaknesses, but the leaders or the advice was to concentrate on turn your weaknesses into strengths and don't let it bog you down or make you worry all the time because they can be strengths, they can be turned into your advantage.
Yes, and that is what we'll be discussing in uh, Act 2. So you could go on to the next slide. So, number one, wait. Okay. So, the power of strength based leadership. In Act 2, we see Carissa frustrated because the team still isn't responding the way she wants. However, with Jeanne and Chelsea's help, she discovers an important leadership principle. Instead of focusing on fixing weaknesses, strong leaders maximize strengths, both their own and their teams. Have you ever felt this way? And what did you overcome it? What did you do to overcome it? Anyone could answer.
Not all at once now.
Okay, I see in Sakura hands up, I think. I don't know if I pronounced that correct.
Yeah, I have, but I don't think I did overcome it. I just did what I had to do. I didn't really know how to react in that situation.
Mm, okay, okay. Anybody else? Okay, so I guess we'll move on. So thank you for sharing. Next slide. Okay, so number 1, the power of strength-based leadership. Next slide. What is strength-based leadership? According to David Burkus, strength-based leadership is the underlying belief that people have several times more potential for growth, building on their strengths rather than fixing their weaknesses. So why does strength-based leadership work? And Carissa initially believed that to be a great leader, she needed to fix all her weaknesses. But as Jan points out, that's a common mistake. Research shows that focusing on strengths leads to faster growth and greater success than obsessing over flaws. Next slide. Key principles of strength-based leadership. Number 1, we have great leaders don't eliminate weaknesses, they learn to manage them. Great leaders recognize that weaknesses cannot be completely eliminated, but they can be managed and reduced in order to achieve success. Instead of trying to avoid weakness, successful leaders focus on developing their strengths and finding ways to work around their weaknesses. Number 2, focusing on strengths build confidence, motivation, and effectiveness because it allows individuals to recognize and utilize their unique talents and abilities to achieve success. Number 3, strength-based leadership creates a positive team environment where everyone can contribute in their own way. Strength-based leadership focuses on the unique strengths of each individual on the team and creates a positive team environment where everyone feels valued and respected. Instead of focusing on weaknesses and trying to fix them, strength-based leadership encourages team members to leverage their strengths and contribute to the team's success. Next slide. So, imagine a soccer coach who spends all their time training a player to kick with their weaker foot instead of refining their best skills. That player won't improve nearly as fast as if they built on their natural strengths. Next slide. So I would like to ask the class to think of a time you improved at something by focusing on your strengths rather than trying to fix your weaknesses. What was the result? I'll give you all some time to think about it and feel free to open your microphone and share. Yes, Siobhan.
A time I could think of would be improv. A strength I could think of is improvisation. So, by focusing on the fact that improvisation was my strength, it worked out in the end.
Okay, thank you. I think it's Nicklin.
Yeah, me again. So, an example I have is swimming, right? So in swimming you have different strokes. So the two strokes I was strongest as breaststroke and freestyle. So what would happen for training is that when we had our free time to practice whatever stroke we want, I would just naturally default to my strongest stroke, which was freestyle, and then when it was time for my exam, I had a lower time than my peers when it came to my weaker strokes. So through focusing on my strengths, I had a good time, but I wasn't as well rounded as I should have been.
Okay, thank you. Thank you all for sharing. You could move on to the next slide. So moving on to number 2, identifying and using your strengths as a leader. Next slide. The strength-based approach. As we know, Chelsea asks Carissa, what comes naturally to you? This is a key question for all leaders. Instead of trying to be someone you're not, focus on what energizes you and where you naturally succeed. Next slide. Key principles of identifying and using your strengths as a leader. Number 1, your leadership strengths comes from what you do well and what excites you. Your leadership strengths come from what you do well and what excites you, because when you are doing tasks or activities that you are naturally good at and that you find enjoyable and fulfilling, it brings out the best in you as a leader. When you are deeply engaged and interested in what you are doing, you are more likely to put in extra effort, take initiative, and persevere in the face of challenges. This in turn enables you to lead effectively by motivating and inspiring others, thinking strategically, and making sound decisions. Therefore, your leadership strengths are closely tied to what you do well and what excites you. Number two, recognizing strengths allows you to lead more authentically, because when you are aware of your natural abilities, you can use them to your advantage in a leadership role. You can form a place of authenticity and confidence rather than trying to be someone you are not or imitating someone else's leadership style. Number three, when you play to your strengths, leadership feels more natural and effective. This process feels more natural and effective because you are leveraging your instinctive talents and abilities. Next slide. Strategies used to identify your strengths. Listen to yourself when you have done something well, even if no one else noticed. Identify the satisfaction you feel when you know something you did was terrific and gives you a feeling of well being. Know what things you find easy to learn quickly. Study your successes for clues of excellence, for glimpses of what can be excellent, and for what things you do very well. Think about your patterns of excellence. Next slide. So, an example: if a leader is great at big picture thinking but struggles with details, they should focus on strategy and delegate detail work to someone who thrives in that area. Next slide. Number three, managing weaknesses without letting them define you. We can all learn to deal with our weaknesses. Some people say weaknesses can be eliminated but cannot be turned into strengths. The aim, therefore, is to master weaknesses so that the strengths will be unleashed in order to increase and become so overwhelming that they make the weaknesses irrelevant. Next slide. Carissa realizes that she gets frustrated when people don't follow her structure. Instead of seeing this as a failure, Jian encourages her to manage it strategically. Next slide. Key principles of managing weaknesses without letting them define you. Number one, weaknesses do not need to be eliminated, but rather they need to be balanced in order to achieve success. Number two, instead of fighting weaknesses, work around them by adjusting your approach. Instead of directly fighting weaknesses, it can be more effective to work around them by adjusting your approach, rather than trying to overcome a weakness. It can be more productive to find alternate ways to achieve your goals despite the limitation. This can involve adapting your strategies, seeking assistance from others, or finding new perspectives on the issue at hand. By working around a weakness, you can still achieve your objectives and be successful while also minimizing the impact of the weakness on your overall performance. Number three, great leaders develop strategies to prevent their weaknesses from holding them back. Great leaders recognize that everyone has weaknesses and understand that those weaknesses can hold them back if not managed effectively. They actively work to develop strategies to prevent their weaknesses from hindering their ability to lead and achieve success. Their strategies can include things like recognizing and acknowledging their weaknesses, seeking help and support from others, and actively working to improve their skills and knowledge in that area where they may be lacking. By taking proactive steps to address their weaknesses, great leaders are able to minimize the negative impacts of their weaknesses and maximize their effectiveness as leaders. Next slide. So, can anyone tell me who these famous persons are?
I know the second guy, but I don't remember his name.
I think the second guy is Tom Cruise.
Oh,
Yes, that's
I
correct.
see the Wikipedia. Yeah, that's Tom Cruise.
yeah, the link's right on the screen.
And the first one is Helen Keller.
Yeah, I know that was a giveaway, but I had to put it.
I didn't
So,
even see it.
okay, next slide. Okay, so Helen Keller. Helen Keller was an American author. She could not see, hear, nor speak, but she learned to communicate remarkably well. Next slide. Tom Cruise. Tom Cruise is an American actor. He's diagnosed with dyslexia and learned how to cope with it. When asked how he manages it, he said, I had to train myself to focus my attention. I became very visual and learned how to create mental images in order to comprehend what I read. Next slide. Whatever their weaknesses, they both learned to manage their weaknesses so that they did not hold back their strengths. Some weaknesses, however, may be problematic because they cause you to function poorly. These need to be tackled directly. For example, let's say a leader who is introverted might struggle with public speaking. Instead of forcing themselves into uncomfortable situations, they could find alternative ways to communicate effectively, like writing clear emails or holding smaller meetings. Next slide. So, does anyone have a weakness that sometimes holds you back? What's one way you can manage it instead of letting it control you?
All right. Well, since okay, we have an
No, I see. Yes,
Yeah,
correct. Yeah.
I would say sometimes I get very anxious, and one way I manage that instead of letting it control me is probably just listening to music or listening to inspirational speaking or something.
Okay. Thank you. Does anyone else have anything to say again?
yeah, I would like to add my weakness as well.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes I get a little emotional or a little too high strung. And the way in which I manage that is I assess what is happening before I even look to snap or before I even look to say anything. I assess what is happening. I take a deep breath. I try to quietly remove myself from the situation and think on it um, with a cool head and come back to the situation after I have thought on it. Because to be honest, it's not helpful or it's not smart of a person to, instinctively just jump or, just say something out of the blue, like instantly. Oh gosh, my words.
I understand. I understand. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Can move on to the next one. Number 4, helping others lead from their strengths. Next slide. One of Carissa's biggest realizations is that not everyone leads like her. Instead of forcing her team to fit her style, she learns to adapt to theirs. Next slide. Some of the key principles of helping others lead from their strengths are: number 1, every team member has unique strengths. Great leaders help them to shine. Great leaders recognize and appreciate the unique strengths of each individual team member and work to create an environment where those strengths can shine. Rather than expecting every team member to be good at the same things, great leaders understand that each person brings something different to the table and that the team is stronger as a whole because of this diversity. Number 2, matching people with tasks that aligns with their strengths makes them more engaged. Matching people with tasks that aligns with their strengths help make them more engaged because it utilizes their natural abilities and talents, which leaders which leads to increased motivation and productivity. People are more likely to feel passionate or committed to tasks that align with their strengths as they are able to use their natural skills and abilities to complete a task effectively and efficiently. Number 3, instead of demanding that everyone works the same way, leaders should be flexible. Great leaders should be flexible and not force everyone to work in the same way. Instead, leaders should take into account the different strengths, personalities, and working styles of their team members and adjust their approach accordingly. They should also be open to trying different methods of communication and collaboration and be willing to adapt their leadership style to suit different situations and needs. By being flexible and understanding that each individual is unique, leaders can create an environment where team members feel valued and supported, which can lead to increased engagement, productivity, and overall success. Next slide. An example can be seen here. If one team member is creative but disorganized, they might struggle with structured plans. Instead of forcing them into rigid rules, a leader can allow them to contribute ideas while someone else organizes execution. Next slide. And lastly, number 5, the bucket filling approach. Next slide. Who developed this theory? Donald Clifton was an American psychologist and creator of the Clifton Strengths Finder assessment, a popular tool used in leadership development and personal growth. His work focused on positive psychology and strength-based development, which involves identifying and building upon individual strength to achieve success. Clifton was also the co-founder of the Gallup organization and served as its chairman and CEO for many years. He is widely recognized for his contributions to the field of psychology, particularly in areas of leadership, motivation, and strengths development. Next slide. So, what is this theory about? The bucket filling approach to leadership is a philosophy and framework that focuses on creating a positive and supportive work environment by building up and filling the buckets of team members. This approach is based on the idea that people have an emotional bucket that needs to be filled with positive emotions such as appreciation, recognition, and encouragement. Leaders who follow the bucket filling approach to leadership aim to continuously pour positive emotions into the buckets of their team members. Next slide. Some of the key principles of the bucket filling approach to leadership. Number 1, people perform better when they feel recognized and valued. It can significantly impact their performance and overall well being. Number 2, criticism drains motivation while encouragement builds confidence. The quote criticism during motivation while encouragement builds confidence highlights the significant impact that feedback can have on an individual's motivation and self confidence. Criticism, whether constructive or destructive, can have a negative effect on an individual's motivation level. When individuals receive negative feedback, they may feel discouraged, demotivated, and less likely to put in effort or take risks in their work. Number 3, leaders fill buckets by acknowledging strengths, celebrating progress, and showing appreciation. Leaders have a responsibility to foster a positive and supportive workplace environment and create motivation for their teams by recognizing individual strengths, celebrating progress, and expressing appreciation. Next slide. So, if a team member contributes a great idea, a leader should praise their creativity rather than pointing out minor flaws. This encourages them to continue contributing. Next slide. So again, our next question. Think of a time when someone recognized your strengths. How did that affect your confidence and motivation? I'll give you all some time to think about it.
I would say, especially if it was like a strength that I was working.
toward, it just make you feel, it give you a positive feeling and it's give you more confidence and make you feel more comfortable in doing whatever you're doing in that moment in time.
Yeah, I could relate to that honestly, especially with some teachers. Like, let's say like you wasn't really, hey boy, like I guess like if you're doing group work or something like that, and some teachers you might be strict, really strict. And let's say you're doing a presentation, so I could use this as an example. Uh, and one of the things is public speaking. And one person may actually have be very confident in public speaking, and the teacher might call them out on it and say, they speak very fluently, I guess. And this could affect them and make them more confident and motivated into speaking more, I guess, and sharing their contributions to the class. So that's my take on it. I don't know if anybody else have anything else to say. Okay, so I guess we'll just move on. So next slide. So Act 2 conclusion. Next slide. Carissa growth as a leader, leading with strengths for lasting impact. By the end of Act 2, Carissa shifts her mindset. She realizes that great leaders don't try to fix everything. They leverage strengths and empower their teams. Next slide. She now understands that in order to lead for a lasting impact, she needs to also consider herself and her player's strengths. These are focus on what you do best instead of getting stuck on weaknesses, manage weaknesses strategically instead of letting them define you, recognize and develop the strengths of others to build a strong team, and encourage and appreciate your team to keep them motivated. Next slide. And this brings us to the end of Act 2. Thank you for listening, and I'll now pass it on to Jan Daly.
All right, everyone. Good evening. My name is Shayan Daly, as she just said, and I will be presenting Act 3, Character and Ethical Leadership. First question, is everyone enjoying the presentation so far?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Nice, nice. That's what we like to hear. How you like our little designs and whatnot, our little stickmen?
I find it so funny.
It's
It's so
funny.
cute.
Yeah,
I
I
love
thought
Susanna. It's like
I
the
thought
best.
so too.
Uh-huh.
All right, so we will start with Act 3. I will ask Chelsea to read the setting.
Act 3, Character and Ethical Leadership. The setting is school courtyard where Carissa meets Jean and Chelsea for an update. Carissa is sitting on a bench looking thoughtful, but less frustrated than before. Jean and Chelsea walk over and sit beside her. All right, Carissa, how's the group situation?
It's better. I started focusing on everyone's strengths instead of just pushing my way of doing things. Some of them have stepped up, and the energy in the group is more positive.
That's great. So why do you still look like something's missing?
Because it's not enough. There are still two group members who barely contribute, and I can tell some of the others are getting frustrated. I want to believe in the strengths approach, but what if some people just don't care?
That's where integrity and ethical leadership comes in.
What do you mean?
Strong leadership isn't just about skills, it's about character. If people don't trust you, they won't follow you.
Exactly. You've already made progress, but now you need to learn with consistency and accountability.
Okay, so how do I actually do that?
Start by being trustworthy. If you say you'll do something, follow through. If you want others to be accountable, you need to hold yourself accountable first.
Hmm. I have been holding myself accountable, but maybe I haven't set clear enough expectations for the others.
That brings us to fairness. You need to make sure everyone is held to the same standard, not just the ones who are already putting in effort.
So you're saying I need to call out the ones who aren't contributing?
Not call out, call in. Have a private conversation with them. Let them know you see their potential, but also that their lack of effort is affecting the group.
And this is where you use respect and responsibility. Approach them with honesty, but also with care. Make it clear that you believe in their abilities, but they have to choose to step up.
That makes sense. I've been avoiding that conversation because I don't want to seem harsh. But if I don't address it, I'm being unfair to the rest of the group.
Now you're getting it. True leadership isn't just about making things run smoothly, it's about doing what's right, even when it's hard.
Okay, I'll talk to them. And I'll also remind the rest of the group that I appreciate their work.
Great. Oh, and one last thing. Understanding personality types can really help.
Personality types?
Some people need structure, others need flexibility. Some people think logically, while others are more emotional. If you figure out how each person processes information, you can communicate in a way that actually resonates with them.
For example, if someone's more introverted, they might not be disengaged, they might just prefer working alone. If someone is a big picture thinker, they might struggle with the detailed tasks but thrive in brainstorming sessions.
So I should adjust my leadership style based on how each person thinks and learns?
Yes, the best leaders don't just expect people to follow, they understand why people act the way they do and adapt accordingly.
Mm, I can do this. I'll talk to the ones who aren't contributing, be clear about expectations, and make sure I'm leading with fairness and respect. And I'll pay attention to how each person works best.
Now that is leadership.
Told you, you had it in you all along.
Thanks, guys. Time to finish this project, right?
Krista confidently heads on to lead her group. End of Act 3.
All right, so guys, so last act, what did you understand from Act 3? The night is getting younger, people. Anyone wants to answer?
I understand, like if you're having a problem in any group setting, you should be open to communicate with them to find a resolution instead of sitting down there waiting for something to change.
Yep, that is very true. Communication within the group settings is needed, like really needed, in order for the group to thrive. I'm trying to get back to my presentation now. There we go. Anyone else? All right, so we will move on. Hold on. Right. Carissa's growth as a leader. So in Act 3, Carissa has already started using the strength-based approach, which Chelsea would have discussed, and it's working. Her team is more engaged, but she faces a new challenge. Some members still aren't contributing. Typical. So, question, have you all ever experienced this, and what did you do to solve it? Now, I know most of you all would have experienced being in a group and people not contributing. So, turn on your mics. Yes, Arissa?
Hi. So I have experienced this multiple times, but just this one time, we were multiple people was trying to get onto the person, like people to reach out to this person, and this person was like just blatantly ignoring us because it was posting on the media, so which means nothing wrong with the phone. And and after a point we were just like, okay, so we're giving you until this specific date and time to to give us a response at least. Because we are not beasts. If you say something happened or you have an emergency or something, okay, we would understand that. And give it like an extension or work with you to come up with like a better solution or whatever. And they just didn't care. So we went to the teacher and the teacher was like, okay, well, I will try. And the person ignored the teacher as well. So at the end, they just was left on the wall.
Yeah, honestly, if the person wasn't communicating with you, much less the teacher, that I think that would be the best solution to just move on without that person. I would say for me personally, I experienced a couple of groups where while the person was contributing, what they were contributing was not positive. It was not brought across positively. It was brought across very insultingly. And the group had a big falling out. And I took the same approach and reported the person to the teacher. The teacher was like, okay, totally understand. Y'all can present without this person. And yeah, that's just how we solved that. Anyone else would like to share?
Maybe I could butt in here.
Uh-huh.
Because in that example that you just gave, what eventually happened to the person who was left out?
Honestly,
Nobody
I
cared.
I
Nobody
don't
cared.
know.
Yeah, and nobody cared.
True.
So at the end of the day, do you really think you were successful as a group leader at that point?
In
If
that
you,
certain
if
situation,
no,
yes.
you weren't. You might have performed well in the assignment, but the objective of a group exercise is to bring everybody together.
That is true, sir. But what do you do when one person is
I know. You want
causing
a lot of headache.
not just headache,
Yeah.
being insulting and
Well,
derogatory to other group members?
well, you just talked about some of the things there. Isn't there some sort of cognitive reframing that it could take place?
We tried,
What
sir.
what was the lecturer doing? Who had the authority to help?
So the messages that were sent from this person, we screenshotted them, we sent it to the lecturer, and she said, this is unacceptable.
Right, but did the lecturer get in contact with the student, have a chat with them, find out what was going on?
I
Maybe
believe so. He disrespected her as well.
Uh, at the end of the day, though, what I want to say is that when you do have somebody who's non-functional, there's something deeper that has to be evaluated at that point in time, and that's something that I think is a feeling, and I've seen it happen with lots of group activities, and it might have helped if the lecturer had gotten involved much earlier in the process rather than in the last minutes of the process that you're all engaging in. But I can understand the frustration of the group because you have a focus, you have an objective, and just trying to get it done, right?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. All
And
right, but
everyone was working well together. It's just this one person.
yeah, it happens, and it won't be the last time you experience it. Trust me. All right, continue along.
Okay, so we're moving on. So Chelsea would have touched on the strength-based approach in her presentation. I just want to reiterate. As Chelsea explained, strength-based leadership is all about identifying, developing, and making the most of a person's natural talents, rather than focusing on fixing weaknesses. Moving on. So this is where character and ethical leadership really come into play. Leadership isn't just about skills, it's about trust, integrity, fairness, and accountability. A great leader not only inspires people, but also holds themselves and others to ethical standards. Right. So we brings us to our first point. Leadership is built on trust and integrity. Ethical leadership. Carissa realizes that if people don't trust a leader, they won't follow them. Jan and Chelsea explain that trust is built through consistency and accountability. But just what is ethical leadership? Can anyone answer this question? Does anyone want to guess? What is ethical leadership? All right, so we will start with this question. What does it mean to be ethical? What does ethical mean? Yes, Niklan?
Ethical refers to acting in a way or actions that meet a certain moral standard.
Yes, that is true. Does anyone want to expand on Niklan's contribution? Yes, Sakura?
Just from what he said, the kind of moral is truthful and honest. It's like
Mm-hmm.
positive moral
Mm-hmm.
sense, I would say.
All right, so it is exactly that. So what is ethical leadership? Ethical leadership is all about leading with honesty, fairness, accountability, and respect for others. Ethical leaders don't just focus on results, they make decisions based on strong values and moral principles. As Niklan and Sakura mentioned, moral, honesty, all of that. Ensuring their actions benefit not just their organization, but also their employees and society on a whole. So now let's talk about the key principles of ethical leadership. Right. So number one, we have integrity and honesty. Ethical leaders prioritize truthfulness in all their interactions. They provide accurate information, admit when they don't know something, and ensure that communication within the organization is clear and open. Transparency means sharing both successes and challenges so that employees, stakeholders, and the public can trust leadership decisions. Leaders who practice transparency build credibility and create a culture of trust, which leads to stronger team collaboration and engagement. Next, we are moving on to fairness and justice. Ethical leaders create Ethical leaders treat all individuals fairly without favoritism or discrimination. They make decisions based on merit, facts, and ethical considerations, rather than personal biases or outside influences. This means providing equal opportunities for growth, recognizing achievements objectively, and ensuring that policies and procedures apply to everyone fairly. By fostering a culture of fairness, ethical leaders create an inclusive and supportive work environment where employees feel valued and respected. And I'm sure all of us, or some of us, would have had an experience with a leader that was not so fair and was not so just in our workplaces, in our school. Okay, so we're moving on to accountability and responsibility. A true leader takes responsibility for their actions and decisions. Ethical leadership means acknowledging mistakes rather than shifting blame. Leaders who hold themselves accountable set a strong example for their teams, encouraging employees to take ownership of their own work and responsibilities. Additionally, ethical leaders ensure that others within the organization are also held accountable, enforcing ethical standards, and addressing unethical behavior when it arises. Number 5, respect for others. Or ethical leaders value and respect diverse perspectives, understanding that a successful team thrives on collaboration and inclusivity. They actively listen to employees, take their concerns seriously, and foster an environment where people feel heard and appreciated. Empathy allows leaders to connect with their team on a deeper level, building trust and improving workplace morale. By considering the well being of their employees and stakeholders, ethical leaders create a positive, people centered organizational culture. Next, we will be moving to leading by example. One of the most powerful ways to promote ethical leadership is through personal behavior. Ethical leaders don't just talk about values, they live by them. Their actions reflect the ethical standards they expect from others, whether it's through honesty, work ethic, or decision making. When leaders set the right example, employees are more likely to follow suit, creating a culture where ethical behavior is the norm rather than the exception. Next slide. And finally, our last 2 points. We have encourage ethical decision making, and commitment to social responsibility. So ethical leaders think beyond short-term profits and personal gains. They consider the employees, customers, communities, and environment. Social responsibility means implementing sustainable business practices, ensuring fair treatment of workers, and contributing to society in a meaningful way. By focusing on long-term success rather than quick fixes, ethical leaders build organizations that thrive while making a positive impact on the world. By following these principles, ethical leaders create strong, trustworthy, and values-driven organizations where employees feel safe, motivated, and empowered to contribute their best work. Next slide. So why does ethical leadership matter? Well, let's break it down. So, number 1, it builds trust. When leaders act with integrity, employees and stakeholders feel more confident in them. People are naturally more loyal to leaders who are honest, fair, and consistent. Number 2, it enhances reputation. Companies known for ethical leadership build stronger brand images. Customers and partners want to support businesses that do the right thing, and that trust goes a long way. Number 3, it boosts employee morale. A positive ethical work environment makes a huge difference in job satisfaction. When people feel valued and respected, they're more motivated and engaged in their work. 4, it reduces risk. Ethical decision making helps prevent scandals, lawsuits, and reputational damage. Leaders who prioritize ethics create a culture of accountability, which keeps organizations out of trouble. Number 5, it creates long-term success. At the end of the day, ethical organizations last. When leaders make responsible decisions, they build businesses that are sustainable, respected, and set up for the long-term growth. Simply put, ethical leadership isn't just the right thing to do. It's what leads to real success. So, we're looking at some examples of ethical leaders. I'm sure everyone knows who is on our screen currently, but can anyone tell me is he famous for? What do we all know Mahatma Gandhi for? Anyone?
As much as I remember, he was known for like a non-violent approach for
That
his
is true.
yeah.
Anything else? All right. So as the person who would have just spoken, sorry, I didn't see your name. Mahatma Gandhi was known for a non-violent approach. So we are gonna discuss him currently. So first we have Mahatma Gandhi, a leader who proved that change can happen through non-violence, truth, and justice. Mahatma Gandhi was an ethical leader known for his commitment to non-violence, ahimsa, excuse me if I butcher that, and truth, satyagraha. Hopefully I said that right. Okay. Which guided his fights for India's independence from British rule. He led with honesty, integrity, and transparency, always standing for justice and fairness, particularly advocating for the rights of the poor and marginalized. Gandhi lived a simple, selfless life, rejecting material wealth and prioritizing the well-being of others. He believed in accountability, leading by example, and practicing what he preached. His deep empathy allowed him to understand the struggles of the people, and his vision for social change inspired movements for independence, unity, and justice worldwide. So he would have basically encompassed all of the points that we would have touched on so far. Uh, as you can see, we have nonviolence, truth, justice and fairness, selflessness, accountability, empathy, and of course, uh, in using all of those, he created social change. Moving on. Now we have another example of an ethical leader, Mr. Nelson Mandela. Can anyone tell me who is Nelson Mandela?
The first black president of South Africa. Um, he also believed in nonviolence, segregation. He fight to get rid of segregation in Africa between the whites and the blacks. Yeah, he was imprisoned for his works. Yeah, in a nutshell.
That's a very good nutshell. So everything she said would have been correct. So Nelson Mandela, a true champion of equality and reconciliation. He started as a lawyer and an anti-apartheid activist, later becoming South Africa's first black president. Nelson Mandela was an ethical leader known for his unwavering commitment to justice, equality, and reconciliation. He fought against the apartheid in South Africa, enduring 27 years of imprisonment for his beliefs, yet he emerged advocating for peace and unity rather than revenge. Mandela led with integrity, fairness, and respect for all, emphasizing forgiveness and national healing. As South Africa's first Black president, he promoted democracy, human rights, and social justice, working to dismantle institutionalized racism. His humility, resilience, and dedication to ethical leadership made him a global symbol of peace, inspiring movements for freedom and equality. So we see both of them have a little connection between them. They would have inspired movements of peace, freedom, equality, and yeah. So we're moving on to the last person. Now I know most people might not know this person, but does anyone know who Satya Nadella is? Oh, I'm sorry, he isn't the last person. He's the second to last person.
No.
No? Anyone? Anyone could take a guess? What does he look? What does he look famous for?
Something with
Something computer.
science.
All right. We have science. Anyone else? I heard someone say something.
I said computer, so computer science.
Ah, there we go. So both of those answers are correct. But he's not so much in science, but yeah, computers. So Satya Nadella is actually the CEO of Microsoft. Anyone who didn't know. So now let's talk about Satya Nadella, the CEO of Microsoft. He is widely recognized as an ethical leader who emphasizes empathy, integrity, and innovation. Since becoming CEO in 2014, he has transformed Microsoft's culture, making it more open, collaborative, and growth oriented. He prioritizes employee well being, inclusivity, and accountability, ensuring that business decisions align with strong moral values. Nadella is also a strong advocate for ethical innovation, particularly in artificial intelligence and cloud computing, promoting responsible technology that benefits society. Under his leadership, Microsoft has expanded its sustainability initiatives and corporate social responsibility efforts, focusing on environmental impact and digital inclusion. His commitment to diversity and long-term ethical growth has made Microsoft not only a business success, but also a force for positive global change. So, as you can see, ethical leadership is all about doing the right thing, even when it's tough. The best leaders lead with character, fairness, and accountability, ensuring that their influence leaves a positive impact. So, we move on to the last example of an ethical leader. Does anyone know this person? Or can tell me about why this person is considered an ethical leader? Okay, I guess not. So we move on. So this person here is General Norman Schwarzkopf, who is a highly decorated U.S. Army general, or was, best known for leading the coalition forces to victory in the Gulf War as commander of U.S. Central Command. With a military career spanning over 35 years, he was respected for his integrity, strategic expertise, and unwavering commitment to duty. Schwarzkopf, this person's last name. Schwarzkopf led with fairness, accountability, and deep respect for his troops, prioritizing their well-being and morale. He upheld strong moral values, emphasizing honor, discipline, and responsibility in military leadership. Known for his decisive yet compassionate approach, he balanced military success with humanitarian concerns, ensuring minimal civilian casualties and adherence to international law. His leadership style, marked by his humility, courage, and ethical decision making, earned him widespread admiration and cemented his legacy as a principled and respected military leader. At the end of the day, great leaders aren't just skilled, they lead with integrity, and that's what truly sets them apart. So we're moving on to our next point, number 2, fairness and holding others accountable. So, Carissa is facing a challenge. Some people in her group aren't pulling their weights, and it's frustrating. But she starts to realize that fairness isn't just about rewarding hard workers, it's about holding everyone accountable to the same standard. Here's what she learns. 1. Accountability is key to fairness. If you ignore a problem, it doesn't just go away, it gets worse. A strong leader addresses issues instead of letting them slide. 2. Handle issues with respect and care. No one likes being called out in front of everyone. The best way to address a problem is through private, constructive conversations rather than public criticism. And I believe we can all agree with that. No one likes to be called out. And number three, believing in someone's potential means helping them improve. Leadership isn't about embarrassing people, it's about guiding them. Instead of calling people out, great leaders call them in, giving them the support they need to grow. Right, so let's take a moment to reflect. Think of a time when someone held you accountable. How did it impact you? Did it push you to be better? True leadership is about helping others rise to their full potential. Okay, we're moving on to our third point. Doing what's right, even when it's hard. So Carissa's final realization is that being an ethical leader means facing challenges head on. She chooses to have honest conversations with underperforming team members instead of ignoring the issue. At the same time, she makes sure to recognize and appreciate those who are doing well. That's the balance, holding people accountable while also uplifting them. So this is what Carissa learns. Number one, leadership isn't about avoiding conflict. It's about handling it the right way. Number two, tough conversations should be honest but respectful. Avoiding them only makes things worse. This is just a reiteration of the last points. All the more, if you're hearing it two times, it's extra important. And number three, the best leaders balance accountability with encouragement. They don't just point out problems, they help people to grow. So here's a question. Have you ever avoided a difficult leadership situation? Looking back, how could you have handled it differently? Anyone is free to answer? Yes, Sakura?
I would say I have, and looking back, I probably could have gotten out of my comfort zone and at least try to be in a leadership position because it might have turned out to be a good thing, but I didn't try at all.
Yeah, I honestly relate to that. I myself stay far away from leadership positions, but I'm a person, I need to get a good grade, I need to see things done. So I naturally will, work to get through. Is anyone else? All right, thank you, Sakura, for your contribution. Moving on to a really fun part, the role of personality in leadership. So Jan and Carissa, Jan and Chelsea, oh my, introduced Carissa to an important idea. People process information differently. If she understands her team's personalities, she can lead them more effectively. Here's what she learned. Yeah. Number one, some people need structure, while others thrive on flexibility. Number two, some people are logical thinkers, while others are more emotion driven. And number three, a good leader adapts their approach to connect with their team in a way that works for them. So, understanding personality preferences helps us to recognize how we interact with others and make decisions. The tricky part, we often assume that others see the world the same way we do, but in reality, our personalities shape how we function and how others perceive us. This idea was first explored by Carl Jung, the man on the screen, a Swiss psychiatrist and psychoanalyst who founded analytical psychology. He introduced key psychological concepts like the collective unconscious, archetypes, individuation, and what we're going to focus on today, introversion and extroversion. So, Jung's original theory, introversion and extroversion. In his 1921 book, Psychological Types, Jung described introversion and extroversion as two primary attitudes that influence how people direct their energy and interact with the world. Does everyone agree with that? Or does anyone have anything, an alternative?
No, I agree with that.
Okay.
I agree as well.
Uh-huh. All right. So we'll start with introverts. Introverts direct their energy inward, focusing on thoughts, ideas, and personal reflection. They prefer solitude or small, meaningful social interactions, enjoy deep focus work, and need time to recharge after socializing. They tend to think before speaking and may come across as reserved. By show of hands, how many of you all think you are introverts or identify as an introvert? All right, I think I saw 10. Is it more than 10? Yeah, I think I saw 10.
I'm a mix of both. I'm a ambivert.
I hear you. All right, so extroverts now. Extroverts direct their energy outward toward people and external activities. They feel energized by social interactions and external stimulation. They prefer action over deep introspection and love engaging in new experiences. They also tend to speak their thoughts out loud and are often seen as outgoing. By show of hands, how many of you all are extroverts? Oh, you only have one person? One person is an extrovert here. That is funny. Okay, we have two. We have two. Okay. So Jung believed that no one is purely introverted or extroverted. We all exist on a spectrum and may shift depending on the situation. So definitely I shift depending on the situation. If I'm not spoken to, I will not speak. If I do not have to speak, I will not speak. If anyone else can relate to that, you can let me know.
Yeah, I kind of relate to that a
Yeah.
bit. I'm
I think
reserved, but I'm extroverted at the same time.
Yeah, very much relate to that. So, a question for the class. Does anyone know the name of the personality assessment that was later influenced by Jung's ideas? It was mentioned earlier on in the presentation, so well, very early on. I wonder how good is your memory? It was a very popular trend for a little bit in
Was it a
20.
personality test?
Well, it's a type of personality test, yes, but what is the name of it? It was a bit popular in 2014. People was doing this test online.
The test is actually on the e-classroom for you guys to
The
use for
test
the
is
next.
actually on the e-classroom.
Personality identity. I can't remember the name, but I know what it is. I just don't remember what it's exactly called.
The Myers-Briggs.
In personality,
The 16 personalities is based on the Myers-Briggs personality test.
Exactly, correct, sir. You get a point. All right. So, as Sir correctly said, the Myers-Briggs Type Indicator, or MBTI. Okay, so the Myers-Briggs Type Indicator is one of the most widely used personality assessments It was built on these concepts, i.e., the original introversion, extroversion, Carl Jung concept. Understanding personality types can make us better leaders, better teammates, and better communicators. So, how do you see yourself? More introverted, extroverted, or somewhere in between? So, moving on to who developed MBTI. So, we just talked about Carl Jung's ideas on introversion and extroversion. But how did we get from there to the Myers-Briggs Type Indicator, or MBTI? One of the most widely used personality assessments today. Well, in the 1940s, two American researchers, Catherine Cook Briggs and her daughter Isabel Briggs Myers, expanded on Jung's theories. They were deeply interested in psychology, education, and personality development, and they wanted to make Jung's ideas more accessible and practical. That is how MBTI was born. So they didn't just stick to introversion, extroversion concept. They added two more dimensions, sensing or S versus intuition or N. This is how people take in information. So, and we move on to thinking or T versus feeling F, how people make decisions. Later, they introduced a fourth, judging, J, versus perceiving, P, how people approach structure and organization. This combination led to 16 personality types, each represented by a four-letter code like INFJ, ESTP, ENFP, and so on. So I don't know if anyone would have took the tests already or would have taken the MBTI test in the past. I think I'm like a ISFJ or something like that. If I can't even remember.
Yeah, I have. I was an
Yeah.
INTP.
Yeah. I mean, it's a fun little test to take. Can help you understand, a little bit more about yourself, but I wouldn't hold it, you know, I wouldn't hold it so strongly.
Actually, if you're very honest with the questions, it gives a very accurate read of who you are. The only thing is that we don't stay the same static individual over time. We
That is
change.
true.
And therefore, from time to time, you might find yourself growing in one area as opposed to another. So it's not a static thing. It needs to be revisited from time to time.
That is true. So as Sir just said, it's not a static thing. It's changeable, it's flexible. And we will discuss that later on in the presentation. So we're moving on. What, Augustine, you have a question?
I was definitely this was case up because I was thinking 2 years ago when I was facing could be possible.
Right. Anyone heard what you just said? Because it sounded like mumbling to me. I'm sorry. All right. Not sure what you just said, but sorry, we'll move on. Okay, so what does this mean? Unlike Jung, who saw introversion and extroversion as flexible tendencies, the MBTI originally presented them as fixed preferences. However, modern psychology now recognizes that personality is more fluid and adaptable. So, just as Sue said, even though the MBTI has been criticized for lacking strong scientific backing, Jung's original ideas still shape how we understand personality and behavior today. Now let's think about why this matters in a team setting. Moving on. Okay, so before I get to that, this is a little picture of the different MBTI types. Here, you can come back to this presentation. Well, we can pretend. You can come back to this presentation and take a read through and see what's relates or resonates with you. So why does this
Better yet, they
matter?
could do the test and get their real.
Yeah, better
Yeah,
yet, you could do the test. But those are long tests, so Right, so why does this matter in a team setting? A mismatch in personality and learning styles can cause frustration, so it's important to acknowledge and respect different approaches. For example, if you're planning a retreat, you might want to include 1. Sending materials in advance. This is helpful for introverts and intuitive thinkers who like time to process. 2. Large group presentations. Engaging for thinkers who love logic and structure. 3. Small group presentations. This is great for extroverts and feelers who thrive on interaction. And 4. Case study applications and action plans. Perfect for censors and judges who like practical hands-on learning. At the end of the day, understanding personality differences helps leaders adapt, collaborate, and create environments where everyone can thrive. So, have you ever taken the MBTI? If so, do you feel like your type matches how you work and interact with others? You can think on it. I know not a lot of you all would have taken the test, but remember this question for when you do. Yes, Sakura?
yeah, I took the test, and at that moment when I took the test, I thought it was a good match for me, and I even convinced my father to take it, and I think it got him spot on. So, yeah.
That's good. That's good. Nadira?
Yes, I took the test many times actually. Once the first time was when I was in high school, so about 5 to 6 years ago, and I turned out to be a campaigner. It was correct. And then I took it recently again for another course, and again for I think a current course I'm doing, and I turned out, and I'm now an advocate. No, sorry,
Mm-hmm.
I'm wrong. I'm wrong. A commander. That's what I meant to say. So, and both are correct. Um, and I think it has really, really helped me understand when you read the overviews and the summaries that they tell you about your personality. It like kind of brought some self awareness. So I would urge
Right,
everybody to do it.
right, right. Well, as Nadira just shared, her MBTI actually changed a little as she grew. So, further uh, making the point that Sir brought up, that it is flexible, a bit more accurate. So, Act 3 conclusion. So now that we talked about understanding personalities in leadership, let's all bring it together with one of the most important aspects of leadership, ethics. At the end of the day, leadership isn't just about making decisions, it's about making the right decisions, even when they're tough. I just got lost there. Right, so after everything we've covered, trust, fairness, personality, and ethics, what does it mean for Carissa as a leader? By the end of Act 3, she's ready to lead with character, fairness, and adaptability. She now understands that number 1, trust and integrity are the foundation of leadership. Number 2, fairness means holding everyone accountable, kindly but firmly. Number 3, different personalities require different leadership approaches. And number 4, ethical leadership means making tough decisions but doing what's right. At the heart of this all is self-awareness. A great leader isn't just skilled. They know their strengths, weaknesses, and values, and they use that awareness to grow, adapt, and lead with confidence. Throughout this chapter, we explored how understanding personality, leadership styles, and core values can shape the way we lead. Ultimately, knowing yourself allows you to make better decisions, improve your relationships, and create a leadership style that is both inclusive and effective. And that brings us to the end of our presentation. We really covered a lot today. I know Sue said this was a short chapter. Sue lied. uh, Trust, fairness, personality, and ethical leadership, all of which play a huge role in becoming a strong, effective leader. At the core of leadership is self awareness and integrity, knowing who you are, leading with honesty, and making decisions that not only benefit you, but the people around you can make you a great leader. We hope this is we hope this discussion has given you some valuable insights that you can apply in your own leadership journey. Thank you for all your time and attention. And we would love to hear your thoughts on the presentation. How do you think we did? Yes, Sakura.
I think you all did a good job on the presentation. It was very informative, and the PowerPoint itself, I just love the little characters. So it made it more engaging.
Thank you. Thank you. I saw another person, Arissa.
Yes, I thought it was very interesting. I like how you all incorporated like the apps that made it more interesting and it really grabbed my attention. Because you know it's very easy to get bored. Yeah, it was very good. I really like the stick the stickman, like Selena said.
Hey, thank you very much. We really was stressing before this presentation. Thank you. Glad you all enjoyed it. Of course, we have references at the end here. And yes, that is the end of our presentation. Thank you very much. I can stop sharing now, sir, right?
Yes.
Okay.